Good afternoon, EDU 100 students. This is your weekly video, just providing an overview on material from and assignments from last week, and then setting you up for the work ahead as we enter week 6. So last week, the chapter that you read was History and Culture in U.S. Public Education, and that's from the Jeannie Oakes text. And in that book, in that chapter, there were sort of some 5 major ideas that the authors describe in terms of the roots of public education and how schools were thought to, the responsibilities that schools were thought to adhere to. So one of them being schools should secure democracy. So if you look at the PowerPoint that's provided on your D2L and content for last Wednesday night, 26, you'll look and see that PowerPoint is available, and I break down several ideas that are included within each of these categories. So, for example, public schools should secure democracy. We know that Thomas Jefferson attempted to include enslaved people in his public schooling plan, but at the same time he proposed limiting their education to industrial training to prepare them for their freedom. Another way that schools were functioning to secure democracy was through Plessy versus Ferguson, that stated that racially separate facilities, so that includes schools being segregated, did not violate the Constitution as long as they were separate but equal. I'm sure you're all familiar with Brown versus Board of Education, but if not, that was another Supreme Court decision in 1954 that basically overruled Plessy versus Ferguson, which stated that separate schools facilities for children based on race was inherently unequal. So if you again proceed through your PowerPoint, you'll see that, and this is also exactly consistent with the book chapter. The next major tenet is that public schools should support the nation's workforce and economy. So around the 1920s, a major role of schools was to teach about specific job skills and the dispositions that were necessary for factory work. That was the major economic possibility for most of the population, was to work in factories. So this idea that children needed to be prepared to work in factories was viewed as appropriate, especially for the nation's population of new immigrant children that were coming. Public schools should ensure national security and international competitiveness. Now, this emerges around the 1950s, right? 1957, Russia launched the first space satellite, Sputnik, and because they sort of won this space race, public schools in the United States were blamed for not preparing students sufficiently to participate in the international competitiveness for academics. So schools were blamed for not being rigorous enough, and then the attention shifted once again, and this time on schools making sure that students could compete on a larger scale academically, and that competition being able to help preserve national security. And then again, another shift in public education was this expectation that schools should be solving social problems such as poverty, racism, inequality, urban decay, and social unrest. So there's been across history, there's been multiple parts of legislation that have been focused on these social issues, but Title I of AESA of 1965 was created to provide financial assistance to those schools to improve educational opportunities for those students who were defined to need additional help. There was also the Bilingual Education Act of 1968 to support advancing the culture and language opportunities for Spanish-speaking students. There was also legislation in 1974 so that schools were provided, that services were provided at all schools for students whose native language was something other than English, so languages other than English. And in this case, this was for Chinese students. So you'll see you should have seen in the chapter, and you'll also see in the PowerPoint that I've provided, that there's been several different pieces of legislation up until this contemporary moment that have sort of attempted to address social problems within schools. So this is why you were asked, in sort of focusing on the first part of your question, your discussion board question this past week, you were asked to consider all of these competing ideologies, all of these competing emphases across the past 350 years, if they were realistic, right? And how schools might be able to emphasize both national economy and international competitiveness while also supporting democracy, while also supporting economic security and the elimination of social inequality. So the idea in this assignment was to draw from, and for all your reading response questions, is to draw from your reading in order to construct a response that adequately answers that question, and then in addition to respond to one of your partners. You should have noticed as well that a rubric has been provided for you. It's listed on 9/26 when you submitted your assignment, and then it's listed again for this week's discussion board post, which I'll talk about in a minute. But your protocols for online discussion are stated in this guideline for and rubric for online discussion board posts and responses. So everyone's assignments have been graded. Those of you who received between 9 and 10 points completed your post in a timely fashion, were thoughtful and analyzed the content or questions being asked, made connections to the course content and other experiences. And I just want to underscore that you all should be drawing from the text in your responses. So yes, this is based on your opinion, but your answer should demonstrate that you've read that chapter, right? And you have some reference points from the reading. Again, a response that got between 9 and 10 points extends the discussion that's taking place. So folks have gone above and beyond that scored 5 points. If you earn scored 9 to 10 points. If you earned 5 points, that means that you just did the post and you just didn't do the response. So make sure that you do your post and your response. Secondly, you have to make sure that your writing mechanics are together. So you should, be using academic writing proficiency so that your ideas are clear and thoughtful, and again, evidence that you've taken some time to take the reading and interpret that reading and then apply it to your response. Okay, so that's the content from last week, and just to repeat, you have in 9/26, you have provided for you the PowerPoint for the reading from the history of U.S. public education, and also in grades, you should see your grade for your discussion board post from last week. Now, moving on to this week, your discussion board post is this week's assignment as well, and it is as follows. In this chapter, as in several others, the authors infuse some history of education as backgrounds for the issues under discussion. However, it is important to keep in mind that this is not primarily a text on the history of education, and a professional educator will want to explore and study much more of the history and politics of the field. My question to you this week for discussion is, why is it important for professionals, educators, scientists, lawyers, journalists, and so on, to have knowledge of the historical context of their field? Why, for example, is such knowledge necessary to teach mathematics to 15-year-olds or reading to 6-year-olds? So this question is really focused on why is this why is what we're reading in this chapter irrelevant to your work, whether you're going to become a teacher, and I know there's folks who are not going to be in the field. So this week, there's two major sections in the reading, one on the philosophies of education, and it breaks down 6 major philosophies of education: essentialism, perennialism, behaviorism, child and community-centered schooling, and then social reconstruction or multiculturalism. The second part of the chapter is around standards and accountability. So there's one sort of mode of around preserving the dominant culture, and then we have standards for teaching and learning, and then we also have standardized assessments. So those are the major foci for this chapter. And so I want to see you interrogate, examine those topics within the chapter as you're reading, and then include specific references when you engage in your discussion board posts in order to respond to this question. I think, again, the most robust discussions are those that sort of go above and beyond than just simply answering the questions at a basic level, and really tackling on with specificity an idea that's in the chapter, and trying to work your way through that idea. That's my expectation for you, right? Just to push yourself to just say more than what is just very apparent. I want you to do some thinking on all of this. So the discussion board post and response is due by Wednesday of this week. I'll continue this pattern of giving some additional time to get the post done. So I'm actually changing right now the due date. I'm just going to change it so that you have until the end of the night on Wednesday to get your discussion board, post and response done. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. If I see that a lot of students are asking the same questions, you may have noticed that I'll have a group response, or one of the graduate assistants will respond to a group of you answering that same question. So know that I'm getting all your questions, and I might be responding to you all at one time in one email or one message. So it's really important that you watch these videos. So hopefully you're watching. It's really important that you check your email or check your announcements, because I tend to try to, if multiple people are asking the same question, that means that everybody probably has the same question. So I want to make sure that everyone sort of gets the attention that they need. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts, reading your thoughts virtually, and feel free to be in touch if you have any needs. Anna and Sam are our graduate assistants for the course. So one pathway is to contact them first if you have like D2L uploading sorts of questions, but anything regarding content, submissions, questions about ideas in the course, please feel free to contact me. Oh, and before I go, your Zoom conference sign up is in discussion also. So the next Zoom conferences, Zoom is a way to communicate with me virtually and synchronously, and the next one is going to be on 10/17. So I see people are signing up. Section 2E, conference 2E, can only have one more participant. 2F can have 2 more. 2G can have 2 more. 2B and 2C are completely open. 2A could have 4 more. 2D can have 3 more. So sign up for those, and if you do not sign up for those, then you'll be completing the quiz in lieu of the Zoom conference, which has to sort of work for everyone's schedule. Okay, I think that's it for now. I look forward to seeing your posts. You should be anticipating receiving the PowerPoint for this week at the end of the week, because that's the format for the class. So I'm asking you to grapple this material first, and then you'll get some follow-through and some clarification for me after you work through some of the ideas in the text. So make sure you read the text closely and carefully so that you can answer those and engage in discussion with your peers thoughtfully. Take care.